Journaling is for every believer. As a believer, you are meant to journal. So just imagine that David did not write the Psalms, like write what he was feeling, how he was feeling, talking to God, writing to God. Just imagine that David did not journal. It means we won't have the book of Psalms, right? So as a believer, you are meant to journal. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new here, thank you so much. Please click on the subscribe button and join this growing family. And if you're family already, thank you so much for always coming back. You know I love you. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you things that you can write down in your journal as a believer. Journaling is a spiritual discipline. It helps to articulate your thoughts, your feelings, and also what God is saying to you. So beyond just writing to God, you are able to write down what God is saying to you in that moment. So you can say that it's a combination of your thoughts and God's thoughts. So writing your thoughts to God and also writing what God is saying to you, you get. And see, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have a new fancy journal to write down what God is saying to you as a believer. It is very important as a believer to write things down. You know, I was looking through my notes some days back, my previous journals, and I was just able to see, and I was just overwhelmed with gratitude to God, you know, seeing how far I have come and all of that. So it's very important. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look fancy. No, it doesn't. Just having a notepad that you can use is good for you to start journaling. Journaling will help you to focus your mind on God and what God is saying to you. It will help you to internalize God's word. It will help you to steward your testimony. So what is it that God has said to you? Write it down. When you write it down, you are able to steward that testimony. You're able to go back to it and see, oh, this is what God has said, and I'm going to run with it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It helps to spur you up. Journaling is a go-to any day, anytime. So I would advise you, I would encourage you today to, you know, start journaling. So let's just dive right into the things that you can write down in your journal. So you have this plain notepad, this plain journal, and let's just dive right into the things you can write inside your journal. The first thing is revelation. That's what God is showing you. So what are those things that God is showing you? What are those things that, you know, God is opening up to you? Write them down. If I can beg you, I would beg you, please write them down, because spiritual things, they are sometimes slippery, and if you are not able to document, you might not be able to like measure your progress, right? So it's very important that you write them down. Revelations. The next thing is instruction. So what is it that God is telling you in this season? What does he want you to do? It's important that you write it down. So these are the things that you can put down in your journal. Instructions from God. The next thing you can put down in your journal is lessons. So these are the things that God is teaching you in this season. So what are those things that God is teaching you? You can write them down in your journal. It would help you to track your progress. It would help you to see what God is saying per season. So lessons. Oh, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. Write it down so you don't forget. The scriptures even tells us in Habakkuk chapter 2 that we should write the vision and make it plain. So making it plain, writing it down is very important. So what God is showing you, what God is teaching you, you have to write it down. Another thing you can document or you can write in your journal as a believer is biblical study. So you are studying scriptures. You can write down the verse, the scripture, what you are learning from scriptures. Writing down biblical study is something that you can do also in your journal as a believer. The next thing you can do or you can write down in your journal is inspirations or ideas. So some things just pop up to you, some ideas come to you, write it down in your journal. As a believer, I'll keep emphasizing as a believer, write it down in your journal. Another thing you can put in your journal is what you are grateful for. So what are you grateful for? What are you thankful for? It's important you write them down. So these are the things that can be in your journal. So you can write down what you are grateful for. Another thing you can put in your journal is your prayers. So who to pray for, what to pray for, your petitions, and answered prayers and all of that. You can write them down in your journal. So you can write down your prayers, your petition, and all of that in your journal. Another thing you can write in your journal is your struggles. So you're struggling with something, write it down. Write it down. See, when you go back, you'll be grateful you did. Write it down. Your losses. Another thing is your losses. Your joys. That's another thing you can write down in your journal. So you are going through a joyful moment, you know, what you are so thankful for, like something that sparks up the joy on your inside. Write it down. Write it down. Your testimony, write it down as a believer. So I've mentioned your struggles, your joy, your losses, your testimonies. Write them down. Even your fears. Yes, you can write down your fears, how you are currently feeling. You can write them down as a believer. You can write it down in your journal. Can write down in your journal is your conversation with God. So you're just like writing, dear God, this is how I'm feeling. Dear God, how do you want me to go about this? Dear God, you just write it out, write it down, write it. See, make it plain. Write it down. Another thing you can write down as a believer is thoughts from maybe a book, a sermon, a blog, a podcast, or whatever it is that you're listening to. Thoughts from it, because you don't really know that some of those things will be what God will use to speak to you. So writing down thoughts from books, podcasts, sermons, and all of that would help you to, you know, like continue a communication with God, if I would put it that way. So it's very good that you write down those things. When you come back to it later, God can start a conversation with you from there. The next thing you can write down in your journal is decisions that you want to make, or even, would I even say, like your goals. Yes, you can write those down in your journal. You can write those down. A decision you want to make, how you want to go about it as a believer, you can write it down. Okay. Next thing you can write down in your journal is your dreams. So what are those things on your heart? What are those things? What are those things on your heart? Write them down. Your dreams, write them down. What you actually desire that you want to see, write it down. Another thing you can write down is questions you want to ask God. It's more like a conversation with God. When you look at the book of Psalms, David was a writer. He was writing to God, asking God questions. God, why are my enemies round about me? Like questions like that. So if you have questions you want to ask God, write it down in your journal. You are going to get answers, so write it down. Another thing you want to write down in your journal is vision. So you have a vision, you have something that God has shown you, or something that you want to do. Write it down in your journal. Another thing is prophecy. Prophecy, write it down, please. Prophecies, things that God has spoken over you, that your pastor has spoken over you, or your parents, like word of prophecies from scriptures, things that you've seen from scriptures that are for you. Write them down, journal it. Don't forget, don't postpone, don't say you're going to write it later. Write it immediately. Write them down. Another thing you can write in your journal is your encounters with God. Like those things, those encounters, those things that you've encountered with God, you can write them down in your journal. So these are some of the things that you can write down in your journal. If you have other things you write down in your journal as a believer, please leave them in the comment section. In that vein, we have some journals. This is script it, write it down. Write it down. So I would encourage you to get this. If you don't have a journal that you're using, or if you just want to add a new journal to your journal collection, write it down. Script it is the journal for you. So we have so many colors that you can choose from. Send a DM to mybookplace.co on Instagram, or I would also leave the link to buy these journals in the description box. Know that journaling doesn't have to be perfect. No one is marking your script to journal. You get, no one is marking your script. No one is saying, oh, you wrote it this way, oh, you wrote it that way. No, it is for you. It is between you and God. So anyhow you want to write it, anyhow you want to do it, just ensure that you write it down. And in case you don't have a physical note that you can use, you can use your notes on your phone and maybe later transfer it to your physical note, but you can use the notepad on your phone and all of that, write there, especially maybe when you're in transit or something just pops up to you in that moment. Write it down, and maybe when you get to a place that you can write out properly, then you do that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned a thing or two that you can journal as a believer. Thank you so much. Please click on the subscribe button if you've not, and please share this video with your friends, leave a comment, share, and all that good stuff. And I'm going to see you in the next one. Until then, remain blessed. Bye.